last lesson. Now we have a slide on the importance of context in relation to hadiths based on what we've just mentioned in the previous slides. Now, this is extremely important, that the hadith, the way you conceptualize them, right, in relation to the sunnah as well, is that the hadith themselves are data points. And so a neat analogy for this is, and of course, if they're data points, you need to contextualize them, as we mentioned. And so a neat analogy of this, for someone that doesn't contextualize them, is like this. It's like, imagine you have a 2-hour film, right? 2-hour video production, whatever it is. But let's just say a film, because people understand what that is. And so in this film, there's a particular narrative that's created, essentially, storytelling. And so you have over 2 hours, you've got this video production, a particular narrative, and you have various characters. And over 2 hours, you've got character development, and over 2 hours, you have different events. You have different events taking place. Now, if someone simply were to take a snapshot of 30 seconds of that 2-hour-long video of one particular character, and were to say, okay, look, this particular character, look, he's angry now. He's angry in this 30-second clip. Therefore, this represents who the character is. Or this person, oh, he's very happy in this particular clip. This represents who this person is. This person, oh, he's deceptive in this clip, without giving context to that deception and what that actually is. Oh, therefore, this character is deceptive, right? That's essentially what it is, right? Just like doing that to a 2-hour video and just taking a 30-second clip, that's essentially what it is to decontextualize reports. And if that's just for a 2-hour video, imagine you had series of videos, series of characters within multiple videos, hour-long videos, and multiple series. That's even more context that you need to really understand the characters and the events taking place. And so imagine and that's just we're talking about series now and hour-long videos, let alone 23 full years of the prophetic period. That's a very long time. You need a lot of context for that. You need a lot of context to really understand and situate hadiths accordingly. You can't simply get one hadith and say, okay, this is what the sunnah is, right? It's not as easy as that. It's not as easy as just doing that. Now, when you have a hadith as well, right, you have a particular hadith, and you have 2 different ways of interpreting the hadith, or deriving meaning from the hadith. One is the base meaning, the overall general meaning, and one is how you understand that base meaning within the context and situating that event within the context of revelation, right? And so, based on what we just mentioned about the hadith as data points, this is why one of the conditions for ijtihad, as scholars say, is having a large body of data. That you have a large body of data, you understand many verses of the Quran, and you understand many hadiths. Why? Because you're then able to contextualize reports. It's a large body of hadiths, enough to understand, to have a decent picture of what revelation was and the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ. Without that, you can't situate hadiths accordingly, right? Without that, you can't situate hadiths accordingly. And also in the context, when discussing context as well, that you have 2 different types of context, and this is also relevant to the condition of ijtihad and having a large body of data. That you have 2 different types of context, right? Well, one type is the broad context of revelation, 23 years, and the other is a specific context of the hadith in question. And so what we mean by that, how is this practical? Now, let's just say someone, a jurist, is presented a hadith. Now, before he's even given the specific context of that hadith, he's able to, at some level at least, situate that report within the broader context of everything else he already understands from the law, from the Quran and the several hadiths that he's already aware of. So that gives that brings a picture in his mind of an understanding of revelation. Now, this report has come to him, and it might be void of context just yet, but he's able to locate that and situate it appropriately given the broader context. So that's one aspect of contextualizing reports. The other aspect of contextualizing reports is to look at the specific hadith in question. Okay, what's the context behind this specific event, and then how do you contextualize that? You see, and so sometimes you'll have that context, sometimes you won't have that context. This is important, right? Sometimes you'll have that context which makes it easier, and sometimes you won't. So what context do you have to rely on? The broader context of law and your understanding of it. And the way you get as much context as possible regarding one event is to gather all the chains regarding that event. And so, for example, let's just say you have one incident. Now, don't simply look at one riwayah of that incident, because that only gives you information for sure. But by collecting and gathering all the other chains, you're including as much information as possible. Maybe one chain or one authentic report will include an angle to the event that another report doesn't. And so what you're doing by gathering all the chains is you're gathering all the context, and then you're able to judge it appropriately, right? And so you're creating a bigger picture to make a better assessment of the hadith itself. And we have a slide from Ibn Khuzaymah, or a quote from Ibn Khuzaymah himself. Ibn Khuzaymah, the scholar from the 4th century, died 311. And so we've got a quote from him in this regard as well, on why this is important. Why this is important, gathering all the chains of one event. Okay. So that's the importance of context. Now we have, right, also the nature of hadith transmission. You have this concept called al-riwaya bil-ma'na. And so